I believe that there is a superhero within all of us. There is that stay-at-home mom that wants to pull the Volkswagen off a child. You know what I mean? Like, what is it that makes us do the unmentionable, step into the unknown? I believe we can be leaders in all of that. And there's also, that sabotaging voice. So there's a supervillain in there who wants to tell you, no, you're crazy. Don't do that. That's big. What if you fail? What if and I invite you to trust that there's a deeper resolve in you that you might not know yet. Sometimes we don't know what we've got until our knees hit the floor. And my invitation to you is, let's find that before your knees hit the floor. You don't have to go through something horrific to step into your superhero essence and affect change in the world. Because if we're not here to love each other, then why are we here? I don't believe there's limitation to the human being. I believe there's only the belief that there is one. So we all can be superheroes. And so I invite that into your space. If you were a superhero, what would your mission be? What would you decide you'd do, not only for you, for your family, but for humanity? And let's do it together.
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out, or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and for every direct account we look after, we sponsor a child in a developing nation with food, water and education. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call, and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Jessie Torres. Jessie, welcome.
Hey, Thomas. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
It is very much my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I am a peak performance coach. I work with people, entrepreneurs, business owners, high-level executives, those that have come to that place where they're kind of stuck. They've reached a certain level of success, but they know that there's something more that they want to give back to the world, but they just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to get there. They've reached that limitation, and I help them, remove those levels of stress and to really come back, peel back the layers of what I call is the heart armor, to come back to our strength, our power, and our limitless evolution, so that they can affect change in not only their families themselves, but other lives. So I'm excited to be here. It's my honor to have coached thousands and thousands of people from all over the world, working for the largest coaching company in the world, and also through my own training, both in shamanic trainings, also meditation, also domestic violence counselor. There's just a lot of different trainings, but my biggest training, I think, has been my journey. And so my outcome is to share that as a great superpower that we all can have with our journey if we choose to see the beauty within it.
Thank you for the introduction. There is a load of questions that I want to ask you. And it's like we talked about before, for the benefit of others. But at the same time, I think the context would be great. So you mentioned your journey. Would you mind sharing your story so that other people can learn about it?
Sure. I'll Reader's Digest it for you. So my journey is, my parents were both born and raised from Peru. They immigrated here from Lima. Not knowing English, they started to make a living here. My dad was previously married, had 2 children, with one on the way. My mom did not know. And so my mom left Peru to leave him. He told his wife he's leaving her, told his son, who was about 5 at that time, that he's now the man of the house, and left them and followed my mom to America. Now, he told my mom that he had divorced his first wife, but really hadn't. Anyway, my mom believed it. They got married here in the US, had my brother, had me. And after that, my dad would go visit his kids in Peru and ended up getting his first wife pregnant again. So I have a younger brother, half brother with his first wife. And then my parents had another child together. So I have a younger brother with my mom and dad. So it's a little bit tumultuous from the context of what my mom had to endure. But what ended up happening is, for as long as I can remember, my dad was sexually molesting me, and I don't have a memory without it, to be honest. And from that, I was just petrified to be alone. My dad did not punish me when he didn't get his way. He punished my mom and my brother. My little brother wasn't quite there yet. But as a child, I took that as my responsibility. It's my fault if my mom is crying and my brother's in trouble. Because when he did get his way, then there would be Peruvian music playing, and there would be, what do you want for breakfast? What do you want for breakfast? And there was this joy in the house. And so I took it as my burden. And so that proceeded to continue. When I was 16, I tried to tell my mom, and I used the word molest, and in Spanish, molestar means to annoy or bother. And so he twisted my words. She never said another word about it to me. So that continued until I was 18. And I met this guy who, when I turned 18, I rebelled. I told myself, I'm 18 now. I can make my own decisions. I'm an adult. And so my dad would say, be home at midnight. And I'd be like, wait, midnight? Okay, I'll be home at 2, and I just thought I'm just doing whatever to get away from here. And one day, this guy I met brought me home late. And my dad was standing on the porch. He looked at him and he said, you get out. And he looked at me and said, you get in this house. And he proceeded to have a night full of berating me. But what was important was the next day, my boyfriend at the time asked me, hey, what's up with your dad? And I said, what? He was mad at you because you brought me home late. And he said, no, that was not an angry father. That was a jealous man. And from that, he opened Pandora's box, and he was the first one to ever identify what I'd been going through. And I probably told him more in those 2 hours than I needed to. But what my mind made up is that in telling him all of my dirty, he still wanted to be with me. And that short-circuited me. I'm just like, wait a minute, you still want to be with me knowing all my filth? Because what we don't know in our conscious conditioning is we start to make meaning about our experiences. And from my context, nobody's going to want a woman that was touched by her father this way. I'm gross now, and I'm damaged goods. And when he still wanted to be with me, I fell madly in love. Now, my ex came from a family of alcoholics. His mother was a brutal alcoholic, used to beat his sisters unconscious, sleep with their boyfriends. It was just very, very traumatic. He was the youngest of 4, the only boy. And so he brought his trauma as well. And what happened is when he was 21 and I was 18, and so I was madly in love, and my dad was still kind of, chasing me around, I decided I was going to move in with him. Now, no offense here. My mom is very devout Catholic, but her method of thinking was that if you are going to live with a man, then you better be married, because she lived by the creed, what will they say? Y qué dirán in Spanish. And so I was not to be living with a man and not be married. So I moved out Monday. I was married Friday. And, my ex and I had a conversation about what we had both been through. And we decided, he said, my kids won't see me with a drink in my hand. And I said, my kids will never be molested. And we thought we fixed it. So we started this journey together. When I turned 21, we bought our first home, and I got pregnant with twins. What we didn't realize is that we were bringing an emotional component of pain and devastation to the marriage. And so the only conversation and language he knew how to have was yelling, vulgarities, insults. His mom called him a loser every day. And my dad was volatile, not quite as bad, not quite as vulgar, but he would call us stupid and, stuff like that. And so it was familiar from my unconscious conditioning, right? It's just like, oh, this is just what men do. The only problem is that he became more and more explosive, more and more angry, more and more jealous, more and more controlling. And I do want to preface this with, I have nothing but gratitude for my entire journey, my father and my ex included. I have a good relationship with him now, and I'm grateful for every part of it. And I say that because I am who I am today with all of it. Now, do I wish that I could rewrite the story and I had a great relationship with my father and a great relationship with my ex-husband? I don't know, because I wouldn't be me. And who I am today is somebody who's passionate about helping people transmute their trauma or take whatever their pain is and turn it into purpose and passion so that we can start affecting change in the world. When I was in my marriage, I became very apathetic. When I was 29 or 28 years old, my brother, who was my only safety, he was, when I was a kid, he was the only one that he would hold my hands when we walked to school. And we had neighbors in our apartments upstairs that would argue. He'd let me crawl in bed with him because I was just such a scaredy cat. And I loved living, in his shadows. And at 29 years old, he was murdered. And it was a senseless murder. It was, a woman he had started dating for just a few months, had no idea that she was engaged prior to somebody else. And he wanted her back and had been calling her. And she said, nope, I don't want you back. I found somebody better than you. He smells better than you. He's better in bed. She was just saying all these things that basically loaded the gun that caused this guy to kind of just go to that crazy place and find my brother and murder him. My brother didn't even know. He thought he created a ruse, said that his car was broken down and if he could get a ride. And my brother shrugged it. All this came out in court, by the way. We had a week-long trial. And he had walked out with the manager, and the manager saw him and saw this guy getting into his car. And my brother just shrugged his shoulders like, oh, I'll give him a ride. Like, all right. And that was the last time he saw him. He took him 3 blocks to a residential area and shot him. He is convicted, and he is in prison now for life without the possibility of parole because he did use his roommate's gun, who was a deputy sheriff. So when that happened, it was just another devastation. I turned my back on God. I flipped God off, whatever God is, universe, whatever you believe. Like, to me in that moment, there couldn't be a God that would take away the one good thing I had in my life. He was such a good man. And so I lost everything. I lost all control. I lost my faith. And if you would have asked me to look for the gift in my brother's loss back then, I probably would have punched you in the nose. But now what I know is that if we don't find the gift, we only remember the pain. And I had to find the gift. So now every single time I serve somebody in grief and I help them, then I honor my brother's life. And so I see it. It wasn't until 2 years later that I found a box of his things, and in it was personal development, things I'd never heard anything about. At this point, I was knee deep in my abusive marriage. And in there was Codependent No More book. There were notes from his therapy sessions. And in that moment, I heard his voice loud and clear said, Jess, this is for you to do, not me. And in that moment, I didn't know what it meant, but it never left me. And from that, I continued in my relationship until I got to a point where I was literally a physical body walking, just dead in every way a human being could die. My ex never believed he deserved me. He had his own trauma. And he used to tell me that God screwed up when he gave me to him, and that when he figured it out, he was going to take me. And so I was going to be, no, I'll never leave you. I'll never leave you. I'll stay with you till I die. I'll stay with you. And I was going to prove him wrong. And so what happened is, because he didn't have a belief he deserved me, he would get more volatile, more mean, more vicious with his words. It's like push me away. And I just kept forgiving until I died in every way I could. I ended up taking a course in emergency medicine. My ex was a cop, and I lived life behind the yellow tape. And I thought, well, I want to help people. I don't know how to do that, but what about firefighting? My daughter said, Mom, you're going to see a kid crying and a kid hurt and you'll start crying. And I thought, well, but if I have the skill set to help the child, I think I could do it. So I took this course, and my ex, who was very controlling, wanted to take it with me, but it didn't work out with his schedule, thank goodness. And I took this course and I was petrified. The teacher said, this course is difficult. You're going to have group study. And I thought, oh my God, like I have to look for the women in the class because there's no way I could take group study with men because my husband will get angry. And I was the girl in the back of the classroom peeing her pants because the teacher's going to call on her, right? And he's like, of course, everybody stand up and introduce yourself. And that's really who I was. I walked looking at the ground. I didn't look up. I lived in shame. It's like I didn't trust my body. My interpretation was that something about me attracted my father wrong. And in my marriage, it would get me in trouble. My husband wanted a trophy wife, but then if I went to the grocery store in shorts, I was a whore and a slut and every other thing because I wore shorts. And so I would gain weight so that I wouldn't get attention. And then he'd say, hey, you put on a few pounds there, babe. Are you going to eat that? So then I would lose weight and then I would get attention and then he would get in fights. And so it's been this constant like belief that my appearance and who I am gets me in trouble. So I was very scared in this course. What ended up happening is I flunked because my ex broke his legs and I had to be in the hospital in the morning at lunch, at my lunch hour. I would go home after work, feed the kids, go back to the hospital, and I flunked a 10 chapter quiz. And in emergency medicine, you can't flunk, you're not going to get past. You're dealing with people's lives. So the teacher told me, he asked me what's going on because he knew it was out of character. And I told him everything. And he said, look, I'll give you an incomplete instead of a fail if you promise to take this course again next semester. And I was like elated. So I'm like, yes, of course, for sure. So what he allowed me to do was audit the class. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I want everyone to know that your act of kindness can literally change the trajectory of somebody's life. I started to be the patient because in emergency medicine, the first class was lecture and the second part of the class was scenarios, right? So they would do mock 911 calls. So I ended up being the patient. And so the teacher was putting me on stairwells, on, under cars, and they had to come answer the 911 call. So I was being like strapped to a gurney, so I was like petrified. But what was happening is they were like so grateful. They'd pull leaves out of my hair and they'd thank me and say, gosh, you're helping us learn. Thank you so much. And I was kind of a techie nerd. So I took pictures of them the entire time. Like they came in with mohawks and earrings and now they were in uniform and they were answering these 911 calls. So I did this. This is back in 2003. So like, it wasn't like you have iMovie now, you can make a, slideshow right away. Like this took some time to put these pictures together. And so I did this montage for them and they were all blown away. So what they did is they pulled together as a class and bought me a Best Buy card, a gift card and gratitude. Now it may seem small, but to me, it again, short-circuited me. I was like, wait, what? Like my dad told me that people just want to get in your pants. Don't trust anybody, because that's what he was doing. My ex told me, Jessie, people subconsciously want to break up a good thing. So don't talk about our marriage to anybody. And so I believed everybody was bad before they were good. And here these people just treated me kindly for no reason. What I knew is I didn't even know to call it kindness. All I knew is that I felt alive for the first time. When I was in that class, I felt alive. When I was home, I was dead. And from that gave me the courage to think, if this feeling is available, then life is worth living. Because I was praying for somebody to blow the red light. The only reason I didn't take my own life was because of my children. I didn't want to do that to them. And when that feeling made me come alive, it gave me the courage to ask for a divorce. Now, from that, I was 38 years old at the time. I had an insatiable hunger to understand. I wanted to know why my dad did what he did, why my mom ignored it, why my husband did what he did, and why I allowed it. And I started to read everything I could read. I started to go to workshops, seminars. I had this like unquenched thirst to understand human behavior. And that led me here. And I became I became a coach for Coaches Training Institute. I had a therapist who told me, I said, I want to do what you do, but that's a lot of school and that's a lot of time. And she said, well, you should be a coach. And I was like, coach, like soccer coach? Like I had no idea what that meant. And so I started to look into it and I felt so excited. So I went through Coaches Training Institute, got certified. And when you get certified to be a coach, you kind of go through it yourself. You know what I mean? And so there was a lot of healing that I went through in the process of becoming a coach. And then from that, I ended up at a Tony Robbins event and loved the community, loved everything that was going on. And so I was obsessed on becoming a Tony Robbins coach. And subsequently, I did. And I did that for 6 years, and then decided to come out and create my own practice and my own, because I led more with spirit and more with why we're here and purpose. And then I started working for a marketing company that actually helps business owners and entrepreneurs get their message out to the world. So I started to coach people that were creating massive businesses, but were stuck in their own limitations based on their past, and helping them get to 5-6 figures a month, which was really rewarding. And so now I'm so committed to waking up the world to recognizing their magnificence and their beauty, because if I can go through all of that and come out wanting to serve the world, and so can you. And that's really my hope, is that in all of this, I don't share these stories for sympathy or pity. I share it because it's something that this human being named Jessie went through. And on the other side of it is a hunger and a desire to serve humanity at a high level. And that's my outcome for each and every person that comes in contact with me.
Wow. Firstly, thank you for sharing that. Although you said you don't do it for sympathy, I am deeply sorry that you did have to go through all that stuff. But as I said before, I think the ability to be able to help someone who is also going through that is significantly increased when you've had to experience it yourself. So I guess the first question is, you spent a lot of time as a coach. Have you been able to help someone who's been in a similar position?
As myself?
Yeah.
Well, it depends which component. Someone who's been in an abusive marriage, yes. Someone who's been sexually abused, yes. Somebody who's lost a family member, yes. When you start to coach people from all over the world, what you realize is that there's some patterns of behavior that everybody starts to adopt. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your culture, because it's not the thing that happened. It's the meaning you gave it. And so we work on that, right? So I don't have to have the story. I've worked with somebody whose parents murdered their parents. So this child's grandparent, and that it's the trauma. And what I want to make clear is trauma comes in all kinds of ways. Some people say, well, I don't have any trauma, I'm good, right? And trauma doesn't have to be catastrophic. What it is the meaning. For instance, if you have a mom who is with her little 5-year-old at the grocery store, and the 5-year-old's playing with toys in the aisle, and she goes up to the front of the aisle to grab something, she can see him, but he can't see her. He lifts up his head, gets scared in that moment, and anchors abandonment. It's like, we don't know. We're meaning-making machines, right? We make meaning out of all of our experiences. It's an unconscious conditioning that we don't even know. And so from that, we start to develop what we believe is our identity based on what happened to us. Like for me, shame was my emotional home. I knew how to shame myself. Everything, I was ashamed of myself. If I left the light on all night and fell asleep, I was ashamed because I wasted money, and how stupid was I that I left the light on, and why didn't I double check? And I mean, I found ways to shame myself because that's who I believed I was. And so when it comes to people's trauma, whatever that is, or their pain, whatever they've attached to pain, it's about unraveling that, because what we do is we build what I call heart armor. We start to put armor around our hearts to protect ourselves. When we showed up beautifully loving as a child, they're innocent, and you look at them and they're like, there's no wrong, right? And they go to a park and they see another child and like, hi, want to play? Yeah. And they go, it's like, there's no inhibitions, there's no fear, there's no judgment, until someone takes their lunchbox and eats their favorite snack that their mom put in there. And they're like, why would they do that? Like, why don't they like me? And we start to anchor not enoughness. Now, the next time they go to the park, they might be a little bit more timid. They might not be so forthcoming. And so a little bit of heart armor was, I got to protect my heart. I can't just go out there and do that, because not everyone is nice. And we don't realize that. And so we keep going. And then we have high school, the dreaded, junior high years, and, all the meanings we make around that. And then we have teachers, that say, oh, this kid, he's just never going to amount to anything if he doesn't get his act together. Some sort of judgment like that. And we take that on as our truth. And so again, we don't know what we don't know, but what we start to do is create an identity about who we think we are and who we think we need to show up as in order to be loved and accepted. And so how can we peel back all that armor to recognize that the divinity of our spirit is the truth? We were made by our Creator as this beautiful miracle, and we've lost our way. So let's peel back that heart armor to come back to the divinity that you are, the divine perfection, and live from there, knowing that you are sovereign and you are strong, and that you can protect that without building so much armor that you don't know who you are anymore.
Thank you for the answer. Do you remember the first time where you were coaching someone and they were going through something really tough and you thought, I can help this person? Do you remember the feeling there, or like the first time that you spoke to someone in that position?
Oh, very much. When I first became a coach, I was very nervous, and I had all my notes everywhere. And, somebody comes not only with their story, but their commitment to their story. And so, yeah, it's that nerve, like, wow, am I really going to get through to this person? And I remember a very impactful moment with this lady who had shared this stuff that she was going through with her family. And I felt compelled to share my story. And there was silence on the other end of the phone. And I was freaking out. I was like, oh no, I shouldn't be talking about myself. It's about them. It's about them. And I screwed up. And I literally went through this whole process in my head. And then all of a sudden I heard her, and she was actually crying on the other end of the phone. And she said, Jessie, you have no idea how you sharing your story with me helped me see my family from a different set of lenses. And I was like, oh my God. And so we were both crying in that moment, and it was a beautiful moment. And I hung up the phone, and I felt like God's hands on my face, like literally saying, do you see what I've been trying to tell you? Do you see like your journey? And that was the moment that I anchored gratitude for every part of my past. I literally picked up the phone and called my dad. At this stage of the game, him and my mom had divorced. He was suicidal. He hated looking at himself in the mirror. He had tons of remorse. And I called him and I said, stop hating yourself. I love who I am. It's okay. I called my mom, please forgive yourself, because she had all this guilt around not hearing me when I was 16. And I called my ex and I said, look, for whatever it's worth, maybe our journey was to bring these 3 beautiful souls, our kids, to the world. And just know that I'm grateful for my entire journey. And please know that, I'm happy with it. I just picked up the phone, started calling everybody, because I felt that connection to humanity by sharing my story. Somehow it served her. Somehow it helped her. It's like, I really have a belief that our journey is a desire and a hunger for belonging, for being loved, for moving away from not feeling enough for anything. I'm not enough to be loved purely. I'm not enough to be loyal to. I'm not enough to be a business owner. I'm not enough to parent properly. I'm not, it's that constant thing that is driving us based on our experiences. And if we can see ourselves through a different set of lenses, it's like I tell my kids, if you could just see yourself through my lenses, you would see how amazing you are. And I had this other like spiritual moment. Again, all I can say is God, creator, universe, like whatever your belief is, it's like I heard that voice say, do you know why you say that? And I'm like, no, I don't know where I got that or whatever. And the voice said, because that's me saying it to you. If you could see yourself through your creator's lenses, you would see the divinity and the beauty that you are. So how can we get back to that? That's my outcome.
Thank you for sharing that. It's a lovely, lovely answer to the question. You did touch on something, and it was about, I'm not sure if you would label it this, but it was forgiveness. And there's a question which I was going to ask you, which is, what role does forgiveness play in unshakable living? And I think that's a good question based on your answer. So what are your thoughts there?
Great question. Forgiveness is a huge component, because the reason we want to come to a place of forgiveness is because of the consequences of unforgiveness. The consequences of unforgiveness are a wounded heart, are a heart that's still anchored to the pain. And I believe everything in our journey happens under divine order. It was written, it was scripted already, and it was something that we asked for. I know it seems crazy for some people. They're like, oh my God, I would never ask for my child to be killed, or I would never, that's a horrible thing to say. And I totally get it. And I'm not here to say that what happened to you was okay, by no means. However, if we don't forgive, there's a festering in our soul that is holding on to believing that something shouldn't have happened. I could say my brother's death shouldn't have happened. And what I am doing is arguing with reality. It's an argument. It happened. I feel it shouldn't. So the shouldn't part is an argument with what actually happened. Byron Katie, who's an amazing author, she says, you know, when you walk around saying that shouldn't have happened, she says, well, it should have, because it did. And if you argue with reality, you lose 100% of the time. And so if what happened and was under some bizarre divine order, I have to find the good in it. I have to find the gift. And in order to do that, once I find the gift, then I can truly forgive. I have a 4-step process to forgiveness. 1, go back to the moment when you were most hurt. Who was that person? What happened in that experience? Go back to it in vivid color and see yourself through the lenses of a parent. See that little child, that little boy, that little girl as a parent, and see what happened, and see from a different set of lenses. When you see from your own parental lenses or your own God lenses, you see a beautiful child that went through this painful thing. But there's also a beautiful child that was courageous. There's also a beautiful child that was brave enough to get up the next day. So maybe they cried themselves to sleep, but they still got up the next day and chose to be kind to the kids at school, or chose to still try to be the best boy he could possibly be. Like that story is also true. So in my journey with my father, I used to build traps to warn me when he was coming into my room at night. Now, we can look at that and say, how sad is it that a little girl had to build traps to warn her from her father, which is true. But I also got very creative and was very resourceful. And you know, they were pretty cool traps, I have to say. And I never stopped him, but it somehow gave me a little bit of peace knowing he was coming. And so that is also true. And what I didn't know is that down the road, when I was going through my very, very angry divorce, I was going to need resourcefulness. I was going to need resilience. I was going to need creativity to get me and my kids a new home. And so again, we don't know what God has down the line for us. We don't know what the future holds. But if he could whisper and say, you know what, I know that this pain is hard for you right now, and I know it really sucks. But if you knew why I need you to build resilience, because I know what's coming down the road, you would understand why I need you to build courage right now. And so I start to look at every part of the journey with, what is the good in this? What could be great about this? Well, there was a little girl that got massively creative, resourceful. She was brave. She was courageous to withstand. How strong is she to withstand that pain so her mom and brother didn't have to suffer? So that is also true. Once I find the gift, which is step 2, I give thanks, which is step 3. Now I'm in gratitude. I'm in gratitude for the journey. I'm in gratitude for that little girl that had courage. I'm grateful to her. I see her not as filth and as something to be ashamed of. I see her as a beautiful, courageous little girl that went through something really hard. And so it's not what happened to us. It's the meaning we gave what happened. And so now I get to fall in love with her. And so once I give thanks, then I forgive. And I'm a big proponent of the Ho'oponopono prayer, which is a Hawaiian prayer that was created centuries ago in honor of forgiveness and healing. And it's 4 phrases. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And you repeat those over and over and over again until you literally feel all of that fall away and you step into true forgiveness. Because at the end of the day, if everything is in divine order and for us, not to us, but for us and from us, we can start to find the beauty in our journey versus the pain. Because either way, we're right. It hurt. You got up the next day. This happened. You still chose to be a good, beautiful human being. Both are true. So some of our, again, the polarity of life, we don't know light without dark. So some of our deepest, darkest moments are converse to the height of our light. So if you can start seeing that the depth of your pain is converse to the height of your light, you'll start to recognize the divinity that you are. So forgiveness is huge, huge. If we don't forgive, then we stay holding on to what we think should have happened. And when we're arguing with reality, we're just going to lose.
Another great answer, Jessie. You are full of great value today, and I'm very appreciative. There was one thing which I was going to ask you about, and I'm not sure whether you may have given enough already, but to perhaps clarify. You said at one point you were apathetic in your story, and apathy, I think, it's a tricky one. And I wonder what you would share with someone who was feeling that way. Would it be anything different than what you've already said?
Yes. I mean, addressing apathy specifically, that's a great question. I've never been asked this question. What I could say about apathy is that it feels like there's no answer. It feels like the only way to end the pain is to die, to be done. Every part of you is so hurt that you don't want to feel anything. It's like you shut all emotions out. You shut because the pain is so profound that you don't want to feel it. And what I would say is, if you are breathing and if you are alive, there is a flicker, there is a spark that still lives within you. And so much so that when these people behaved kindly, they fanned like that flicker became a little bit of a flame. It's just like, oh, wait, what? And when you're apathetic, you might think there isn't any. I didn't know that I could be pulled out of apathy. But that's the beauty of love. That's the beauty of kindness, that when people behave in a way that is loving, because I believe we are love innately. We're born in love. We're taught to hate. So we can come back to love again, and love begets love. When people are being loving, it fanned that little flicker enough to become a spark, enough to light a flame in me that said, you know what? I'm so confused. I was dead. And all of a sudden I'm feeling something. I'd shut all my feelings down, but all of a sudden I'm feeling something. I'm feeling like this joy, like this happiness, this, I can't wait to get to this place because I'm feeling something I can't explain, but it's the first feeling I've had that made me come alive. And so my invitation to anyone that is apathetic, trust that if you're living, there is a flicker still left in you. And I would seek it. I would search for it. What is that? What is keeping me alive? There is something there, and start to find moments where you can feel the beauty of love. Maybe in your own behavior, maybe going to, Starbucks to get your traditional cup of coffee, but instead you chose to compliment the Starbucks barista, and you say something kind and she smiles at you and you smile back and you get a twinge, and it starts to fuel that flame. Smiling, being kind to our neighbor, being kind. You start that process, the universal law of reciprocity, you will get back more love. and you'll want to give more love. And that just might be enough to fuel that flame for you to make a different decision in your life and not live in that apathetic state. So find somehow to be loving, even if you have to put on a corny movie, like something that makes that flame just flicker and light and ignite. Maybe it's going to the park and watching children play, seeing them smile, laughing, hysterically. Google infants laughing. It's, nowadays on TikTok, those things go viral when you do something and the kids are just laughing hysterically. You can't help but smile, right? You can't help but feel the joy of that child. So do whatever you have to fan that flicker so that you can wake up to realize that you deserve to be loved and that love is still available.
Thank you for that amazing answer. There's a term which I noticed in your profile, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. The term is fierce grace. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
Whew. Initially, I recognized it as the polarity, right? They're two different energies. And the yin and the yang, the strength and the grace. We are all masculine, feminine. We all have both components. I think fierce grace is the universal intelligence inside our beingness that says, I'm going to get up and handle that mission and I'm going to attack it with all I've got. And the other one that says, you know what, oh my gosh, I'm going to show so much love and so much grace in this moment because this person is tender and I need to be tender with them. And how can we really be empowered to find that within us? I think that, women have fought so hard to prove that we could do it all, that we've kind of tipped the scales. We're powerful, and I love that. However, we've gotten to a place where we're wearing a masculine mask more so than our true essence, which is feminine, so much so that our men are confused and they're like, can I help you with those groceries or will I be insulting you? Like, I don't know what to do, and so women have become exhausted because we can do it all, but do we want to? Right. And so I want to help people understand that we have the power of both. And when you really connect to the masculine part of you, which is that, and I love this example because I believe in like the infinity symbol, it's the blend of masculine and feminine. For men, if they're masculine in their core, they will show up to do the mission. They will show up to handle the situation. They're the hunters. They're and however, a heart-driven warrior will trump 1,000 dark nights. So when there is a warrior in his masculine who is driven by his feminine, which is to love, he is unstoppable. And he will, take down a whole, the enemy when he has to, or protect his family. So it's like, there's this saying that says a warrior doesn't kill because he hates what's in front of him. He kills because he loves what's behind him. And so how can they be that protector? And that is the blend. So fierce grace is recognizing that we can be both. If you can access that beautiful, powerful part of who you are that can handle any challenge. It's like a stay-at-home mom lifting a Volkswagen off of a child. It wasn't because she thought she was powerful. It's because she loves that child and wants to help that child. And suddenly she does the unmentionable. How can we access that, the fierceness of our spirit, to continue to move forward, to help handle any challenge and protect the weak, and the grace and the beauty that we have to love, to nurture, to care for, and to protect? If we're the stronger one, then because we love, we show up with that fierceness to protect. I have this picture here that sits in front of me and I absolutely love it. And it's the warrior woman with the lion behind her. And I think it's just a beautiful example of who we get to be in love and in our power. And fierce grace actually came out of a picture of a horse. I saw this beautiful, I love horses. I think horses are beautiful animals. They have this potent strength and power. But in this picture, and I have it actually hanging right here, this horse is looking down and sideways and its mane is covering its eye. It's a very sensual picture, and all its hair is coming down, and you see the grace of that horse, but you see its power. And the photographer, and I didn't know this, when I saw the picture, I fell in love with it. I saw it in Wyoming, and I had been traveling. So I wasn't going to buy this big, huge picture. I wasn't going to take it home. But I fell in love with it. And it wasn't until like 2 or 3 years later that I saw the same picture on Rodeo Drive in California in a gallery. And that's where they had cut out the name the photographer gave the picture was Fierce Grace. And I loved it. And understanding my own self now and recognizing the beauty of the balance of both, what we can do in our power and what we can do in our power through love, we can be Fierce Grace and we can bring a difference to change the world.
Well, I do feel you're one of the topics you speak on, if I'm not mistaken, is being the superhero of your own life. I do feel a little bit like I've interviewed a superhero today. So thank you. Is there anything I should have asked you about?
No, you did fantastic. I appreciate the questions. And just in relation to the superhero, I believe that there is a superhero within all of us. There is that stay-at-home mom that wants to pull the Volkswagen off a child. You know what I mean? Like, what is it that makes us do the unmentionable, step into the unknown? I believe we can be leaders in all of that. And there's also, that sabotaging voice. So there's a supervillain in there who wants to tell you, no, you're crazy. Don't do that. That's big. What if you fail? What if and I invite you to trust that there's a deeper resolve in you that you might not know yet. Sometimes we don't know what we've got until our knees hit the floor. And my invitation to you is, let's find that before your knees hit the floor. You don't have to go through something horrific to step into your superhero essence and affect change in the world. Because if we're not here to love each other, then why are we here? Why do we want to make the money? Why do we want to, connect and do that if we don't want to share it with somebody? I coached a billionaire who literally said, could you help me just be? Because I've been doing my whole life. And he was on his 5th marriage. His children didn't talk to him, and he was tired of hiring a massage therapist just for physical touch. He could buy an island. He had all the money he could ask for, but he was poor in his spirit. So if we're not here to love each other, I don't know what is. So if anything at all that limits you from seeing, because I don't believe there's limitation to the human being. I believe there's only the belief that there is one. So we all can be superheroes. And so I invite that into your space. If you were a superhero, what would your mission be? What would you decide you'd do? Not only for you, for your family, but for humanity. And let's do it together.
Jessie, knocking it out of the park with every single answer. You're an excellent podcast guest, and I have no doubt that you'd be the same excellent as a coach. And congratulations for all the people you have helped and will help. If there is someone who would like to get in touch with you, where do they go?
They can go to unshakeablelife.com. I believe that we can all have an unshakable life. And so unshakeablelife.com will lead you. You can also go to unshakeablelife.com/life-coach. Either way you get to me. I'd love to chat with you. If there's any way I can serve you, I will.
Jessie, thank you for being an excellent guest today.
Thank you, Thomas, for having me. I'm super grateful.